Hey everyone, welcome back to the Radical Care for Christian Counselors podcast, which is for really anyone who wants to care well for other people. If you're a counselor, pastoral care leader, mental health professional, mom, dad, if you really feel like you do these constant one on ones, and I was even talking to a parent just the other day, and I can relate to this as a single mom. She had kids and she's like, Bethany, she's like, I love your podcast because she's like, I'm not a counselor. I really don't think I'm a mental health professional. I'm definitely not a pastor. But she's like, Bethany, I have a small group right in my home. It's my kids. And I thought about that. I'm like, that's brilliant because I have my three boys and we do a lot of stuff together. So we're constantly in groups and sometimes they can be overwhelming, but if done in the right way, that's what we really focus on here. With it's done in the right way, with the right heart, we're not just surviving the group, we're thriving through it. And that group environment is a lot more powerful than doing ongoing one on ones. And so, how can we bring this into your life? Well, we're right in the middle, second one of our Thrive series, because the name of this business is Step Out and Thrive. And as I talked about last week, there's many times where I go to speak, where I'm doing one-on-one coaching, where I'm doing group coaching, and we get to this reality of like, wait a second, the way I'm describing thriving, and especially what I want to see in these groups, are not the same way that people are imagining when I'm talking about thriving. It's a different, totally different thing. And so, what I wanted to do is I wanted to break up each letter of this acronym thrive. But actually, I think after we get through this, you'll have a better understanding and a deeper understanding and more questions and more experiences to really understand what I'm talking about with thriving. Because a lot of times we think thrive is doing more, that's surviving. When you're leaving it up to you to do it, that's surviving. God has called us to thrive, and it looks completely different. So the first letter last week, T, is through. If you missed that, I really challenge you to go back and watch that or listen to that, whichever way you get this wonderful podcast, to go back and experience that. Because this week we are going on to the H. Congratulations, you know how to spell thrive. Good job. TH, and that stands for him. HIM. By that him, we're talking about the capital H, and we're talking about him being God. And so I'm going to start out with my story, when we'll talk about God's story, and then I'll challenge you, what is your story? Knowing God changes everything, doesn't it? And I know we think of that, but I want you to picture that I was walking through the period of my divorce, and I had a couple different friends in my life at the time, but I had one specifically that said, Bethany, there's something I want to give you. And I had it on a wall. And she's like, I'm going to give this to you because I think I need to pass it on to you right now. And the truth is, I actually made a copy of this and actually passed the copy on to somebody else because I've kept it over the years. And so I'm going to show it to you guys. And this is going to look amazing on camera because it fell. So just go with me. Okay. I had to bend down and pick it up. I'm going to show you what this says. And this was on my bathroom mirror. And literally, I took it right from my bathroom mirror right now. So I don't think there's anything weird on it, but I want you to see. If you can see, if you got the camera, yes, you will see that middle part says, I know who I am. And it has all of these different words and names that God called us: blessed, chosen, mine, and with the verses. And so I clung on to that. I really did. I clung on to that on days where I was just overwhelmed by my kids. I love my kids, but I was overwhelmed by them. I was making choices. I was still working. I was still battling all these different things in the bathroom. And if you are a mom, you get this. The bathroom is your sanctuary sometimes, okay? The kids will go bother you any places, but my boys, thank you, Jesus, will not come in the bathroom. They won't. Not with me anyway, which is great. I will take that. So I was in there, and that was hanging right there. And I could just say, okay, God, remind me who I am, remind me who I am. And there was one specific day, and I don't even remember why I was in there, but I was crying. I do remember that. I was crying And I couldn't even look at this. I said, God, I don't know who I am. I see those words, but it doesn't make any sense to me. Can't believe it. I don't feel it. I don't experience that. And he's like, Bethany, you can't experience those words because you haven't really experienced me. Who am I, Bethany? I just remember stopping that day and going, God, who are you? Like, I've been following you all my life, but I don't know that answer right now. And so I started researching the names of God. And I remember waking up before my kids could wake up, reading a devotional, looking at these names of God, writing. And I'm not talking about just a paragraph. I'm talking about filling up notebooks that thick that I'm currently working on scanning in so I can listen back to my own writing. One of the names that meant so much to me during that time was the God who sees me, El Roi. This is where the Bible part's going to come in God's story. Because I think there's some times when we get to the end of our rope where we're like, that him, that God, I don't know if I really know him. Like, I know what he calls me, but I don't know if I really know him. And the word know is a relationship, to be deeply known. We talk about in our groups all the time here at Step Out and Thrive. To be deeply known, to be seen. And so in the Bible, there's a story, and most of you guys probably know. And it's in Genesis. Let's see, I'm going to double check this because I don't want to say this wrong here. I believe it is, Genesis chapter 16. And it's the story of Hagar, who is Sarai's mistress. And she was Sarai's servant who was helping out with her. And Abram, the situation at that time, he still hadn't had a son. And, Sarai, she's like, well, and not that we figured this out last week when we talked about going through how, well, God promised us to get to the other side, but it's not working at the speed that I think it needs to work at, so I'm going to help. And so that's what Sarai said, hey, why don't you take Hagar, my servant, and let her sleep with you? And then maybe then God will give us the offspring like he promised. Well, we know what happens. Abram sleeps with Hagar. Hagar gets pregnant. And we don't know exactly all the details, but all we know is that Sarai believes Hagar is treating her different because almost like she knows that Abram's now really favored with him. I mean, she's carrying their offspring in her stomach. We don't know how that relationship went, but all we do know is that Sarah, it's in the Bible, Sarah actually abused Hagar. We don't know what that looks like. But it got to the point that was so bad that Hagar ran away from Sarah. Wouldn't you? I mean, my goodness. Here you are doing what you're told to do. I don't know the whole situation. She might have acted out. I mean, my goodness. Look where she is. But here she is. She's ran away. She's by this tree by herself. And I love the story because God meets Hagar. We don't know if she had a relationship with God before this point. She's from Egypt. We know that. Okay. That's all we really know. We don't know any of her past. But Hagar gets to meet with God. They have this conversation. God's like, what are you doing here, Hagar? She's like, I'm running away. I'm not going through that. No, thank you. I'm going this way. I'm going safe. And I have no idea what's going to happen with this child that's inside of me. God tells her that she had to go back as his plan, that he is with her. And not only that, that this son that she is going to bear is going to do so many amazing things with nations, that he's going to build up a tribe and build up people. And we know Ishmael, who was her son, became the Ishmaelites. Oh yeah, anything with ites, had fight with Israel. And sure enough, that was one of the main tribes that had fights with Israel a lot. They were in a war a lot. And so Hagar is in this conversation with God, and her response to that, you are the God who sees me. El Roi. Up to that point, I don't know what she called God. But after that day, she could call God out of a relationship that they had. You are the God who sees me. You understand this child that I'm carrying. You understand the pain that I'm going through with Sarai. You understand that I'm probably not even in my own country anymore. I don't know what's happening, that I'm scared. You are the God who saves me. You are the God who can get me through what I'm walking in right now. I'm not alone. I don't have to do all this myself. Instead of her looking at herself going, I'm Hagar, I am Ishmael's mom. Instead of that, she goes, I have been seen by the God who sees me. Do you see the difference? The him part of Thrive, again, big shocker, has nothing to do with us. That's everything to do with him. Have you really taken the time to stop, although it's important, but to stop necessarily looking at how he calls us? I mean, oh my goodness, that he gives us so many names. But instead of that, will you stop and ask, God, who are you? What are your names? What names do I call you? How have you been in my life? Do you know who you're talking to? Is there a relationship there? Have you spent time with that? That is what thriving really is. It has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with experiencing that God, the El Roi that sees you, that knows you, that wants to be with you. If you can't see him, he sees you because you've experienced that. How many times do you think Hagar had to remember that moment that God saw her when she had to go back to Sarai and she had to go through what she went through? How many times do you think that moment stuck in her mind, even as she was giving birth to Ishmael, not knowing how that was even going to play out? The hymn here talks about God and his relationship with you. Your challenge this week is, what's your hymn story? Who is God to you? If God was standing right next to you right now and say, hey, who am I to you? I know we can probably regurgitate what we know from the Bible, but what's your experience? What's your El Roi experience? Have you really spent time with him? Who does he call you in the quietness? For me, it's Kiddo. That's one of the names he has for me is Kiddo. One of the names I have for him is Abba. Which means daddy. Sometimes I just go, hey, God. What is that relationship? What does that really look like? And if it's not there, don't sit there and condemn yourself. Yeah, because that's a healthy place to be, right? Let's start new. Say, God, I don't know who you are. I followed you, but I really don't know who you are. Can you show me who you are? For me, it was a devotional that I got into, and then I got really deep into the names of God. Maybe that's the direction that you want to go. Maybe it's looking through old journals of how God has shown up in your life. Maybe it's looking for him in different ways. Maybe it's plugging into your local church, plugging into a group here at Step Out and Thrive. Spending time with God. What does that really look like? Because here's the deal. If we're really going to thrive and we're going to go beyond surviving this every day, we have to have an ongoing relationship with him, which means we have to know who he is. So your he story is, who is he to you? Write that out. Write out the name that you give him. Write out your experience of him showing himself to you. And if you don't know that, if you can't answer that right now, be honest about that too. Because you know what? It's when we're really honest and we really can see that God sees us, well, that's when we can really see him. Can't wait to see you in the community this week. If you're not part of our free community, come join us. Look at BethanyBourne.com and get connected that way. We'll be talking about our hymn stories this week. And just know that I'm here. And I'm praying for you as you do this deep work. And you're not alone. And we're going to go from surviving to thriving each week. So, dare to do more than just survive. Step out and thrive. Have a great week, you all, and I'll see you next week. Bye.